Doomsday Clock, number 7. This is Geoff Johns and Gary Frank, as we've come to expect. And this was the one where, in the very first page of the book, we actually get I was going to say Martian Manhunter. we get Dr. Manhattan. I was like, very different. That's a green dude. We're talking about the blue dude today. Oh, there is Mars. There's Mars stuff blue happening.
And there's a lot of green.
There's green light specifically.
Yes.
But yes, so we have Dr. Manhattan actually narrating at the start of the book, and it's the third panel, because he's describing Alan Scott and his accident on the train with the lantern, how he became the Green Lantern. And then in the third panel, he just says, "Oh, I just moved the lantern 6 inches out of reach," and I audibly dropped an F-bomb whilst reading the book.
Yeah,
and
he goes, "Oh, I moved the lantern 6 inches out of reach. Alan Scott died." What the hell?
So it just kind of shows you, for all of the Superman's the first hero, this is Dr. Manhattan's doing now, because he's wiped the Justice Society.
I know there's the whole 10 years thing,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't need 10 years. You just need 6 inches.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously this is confirming a lot of like things we've been thinking and saying for a long time, ever since they revealed that Manhattan was behind things. Like, oh, he's changed things, but to have him just openly admit what seems to be the very first thing he did, the first thing he changed that altered everything, maybe the only thing, was he moved a lantern 6 inches.
So remind me, was Manhattan a scientist before?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's been forever. So now he's just doing the scientific method but with human lives at stake. Like, this is a completely unethical, experiment.
I think that's the key reason why this isn't the only thing that he changed. You said, "Oh, maybe this is it." The core of scientific experimentation is repeat.
Oh, sure. I like the idea that if that's all he changed, all he did was move an object 6 inches, and that's what's caused all this. It's kind of an insane idea. But you're probably right. He's probably changed a bunch of things. I actually, the bit that really hit hard though is before that, panel 2. This is a very eventful first page, might I add. Panel 2.
We're 3 panels in right now.
We've backtracked to panel 2. He mentions that, later when he became the Green Lantern, the Justice Society, the table, the round table. He doesn't actually say the JSA specifically, but he mentions the round table and the group of heroes, talking around it. At the bottom of the page, when he's recounting what the events are now that he's moved the lantern, he says he wipes his finger through the dust on the table, the unused table, and I'm like, man, you're killing me here, Johns. You're killing me. You're stabbing a knife into my heart and you're twisting it.
Right.
Yeah.
And we know that Johns was informed by Robinson's The Golden Age comic. So, and that's why he got this, invigoration of the Justice Society in the late 90s, early 2000s with Robinson, but it stemmed from that. So the fact that he's going and wiping all that from existence, it's like, kill your darlings, that whole saying. I forget which author had said it.
Kill your babies, yeah. So it's often used in filmmaking when you have to cut scenes for pacing, and you might really love a scene, you might love it, but you know that it's not actually adding anything to the overall plot. But on its own, you love it. You love everything that's in it, but you have to kill your babies because that scene's your baby. That's what it. So yeah, I think the other thing this first page does, because it goes a lot into the history of how this green light landed on Earth and all the forms it's taken over time. Ultimately, for me, this was all giving it backstory, but it was re-establishing how Manhattan thinks and how he talks about things and how he's picking things from different points in the timeline, and he's like, it's all happening at once for him.
Yeah.
This panel at the bottom, where we mentioned, that with the table with dust, it goes from it's January 1950. I'm standing on Alan Scott's grave, and then it's November 1940. Is the very next thing on the same panel?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So
it got me like. So you remember in Arrival how the aliens see time?
Sure. I was going to say, is this spoilers for the movie before you make your point?
No. But how they, because of their language, they view time differently than we do. They see it in all its 4-dimensional glory. This is what Manhattan's doing. That's how I saw it in this, is he's experiencing everything at one time. But now that he's changed things, it's almost created these branching, things. So he still kind of knows what was supposed to happen, but now he also knows what has happened because of his involvement, and that's makes my brain hurt.
Yeah, because that's more than 4 dimensions. Because 4 dimensions is just the idea that you can move through time. Once you start changing it and creating new branches, then that's more dimensions.
Yeah.
we got.
It's 4th dimension plus.
Yeah.
Because once you get to the 5th dimension, now you're dealing with Mixie, and we know he was locked away for whatever reason. So
probably because he can mess with this shit.
Yeah, it's probably because he's aware of the changes because he's in the 5th dimension.
Yep.
So I mean, I think that's arguably is just him playing with the 5th dimension because he's altering things, and Mixie's like, hey, stuff's going on here.
What up, bro?
Who else is changing things? I'm not the only imp in the village anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I mean, technically, would that make Manhattan a 5th dimensional being? Because he's noticing the changes.
He's become one, yeah.
Yeah. Like, if that's how all this ends, I'll be a little upset, but I'll also be like, okay, that's pretty cool. Like,
I feel like Matt's opinions on comics often sum up to, I'll be upset, but it's pretty cool. I feel like that sums up a lot of your feelings on a lot of comics.
So just to get back to this first page.
Oh, here we go. I was going to go to page 2.
But... No. I want to mention specifically something on page 1.
Sure.
So yeah, we go through all of this story. And then you get to the end, and it's 1 month into my future, I see nothing.
Oh, sure, yeah, we should talk about that.
Shit, where are we going?
No, obviously we come back to this at the end, so I think we'll save a lot of this for this, but it's worth pointing out how that sets up the tone of the issue, where you're like, wait, what?
You're immediately like, where are we going with this?
It wasn't like this before, so arguably is he at fault for this, and that's something he even kind of ponders at the end. Is this my fault that everything's ending? We'll get into the specifics of that, but also point out, just there's the other line here. Go on. Surface on Mars. Oh no, he doesn't say it here yet. He doesn't say it here. No.
Checkerboard?
No. There's a line about the most hopeful amongst us is now hopeless. I thought that might have been here, but that's later.
I'll let you move on to page 2 now if you like.
Thank you.
I mean, we've spent 7 or 8 minutes on page 1.
Buckle in, everyone. All right, so obviously we got back to the last issue was mainly Mime and Marionette. So this issue, everyone's kind of back. Rorschach's here with Johnny and Saturn Girl, and she's kind of explaining her whole thing, and the owl ship shows up. There's a page here where I can never have remembered all this. We're going to have to look at it and actually break down everything that this page talks about. But it's all these different news reports of things that are happening around the world. And there was no way to remember all this off the top of your head. There's so much going on.
Yeah.
Because Geoff is there. We got refugees disappearing. We got an animal, vegetable, mineral man, who's in Calcutta.
He's essentially Beast Boy. That's what I'm just gonna say. Like,
sure.
You can turn into animals, vegetables, and minerals. But what I like is he's part of the Indian team called the Doomed. And they seem to be Doom Patrol-ish. And they busted up a ring of human traffickers, and then Animal, Vegetable, Mineral Man decided to eat the human traffickers.
Yeah. Let's not brush over that Japan has domesticated kaiju.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
That's their part of the heroics. Yeah. Which kind of bums me out, because I always liked Morrison's idea of the Japanese superheroes. Because he puts a distinctly Japanese culture onto it.
Sure, let's do it.
Yeah,
I'm into it. And then it's really, we have a Hyeth member Dybook wiped all of the Ministry intelligence computer systems, and this really what I like about this is the image here on the panel. It's this really old school, almost dot matrixy looking like graphics of this guy in the computer screen, threatening everyone. And then,
reminds me of the newscasters in Dark Knight Returns.
Oh, sure, yeah.
How they were kind of shown. Yeah.
And then we have
also. Go ahead.
President Xi Jinping's dreams were invaded by an Australian metahuman and tortured by a basically creature, but Australia's denying the accusations.
Yep.
So that was a fun one.
Of course.
So chaos, basically. Chaos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it seems like Geoff is leading this, almost like he's putting together his own, I don't want to say it's a whole force, but he's reaching out through Markovia to these other groups.
it's almost overwhelming, but ultimately for me, what I thought was fun about this is that, okay, there's a lot of stuff going on here, and I don't think any one of these things in particular is super important on their own. But you turn the page, and I like that it basically all sells.
Sets the tone.
It's almost like setting up a punchline. Not so much as it's a funny punchline, but you turn the page and Saturn Girl says everything's going to be fine, and we've just seen like all this chaos. Like, you know, it is almost a joke in a sort of dark way, but also kind of hopeful in a way. It's like, okay, everything's going to be fine. Trust me. Doesn't matter what's going on.
Right.
Things are going to be okay. And this is where she reveals that she's in the future, and then Rorschach's kind of like, you know what, mate, I'm starting to regret bringing these two along.
Yeah, like, yeah, he didn't mention that.
Yeah, but they do bring up Superman, and she mentions that she's here to fix the timeline in case something's trying to interfere with Superman's existence. They also mention in the news that despite the fact that it's called the Superman theory, Superman's actually the one left who no one's kind of been cynical about. Everyone still kind of trusts him.
Right.
He's still allowed to go into any country.
Yeah.
Just because he just saves people. Because he's
he's trusted. He hasn't done anything to break that trust like these other ones have done.
Yeah.
You know? So, and I like that too, and especially with what it represents for the Legion of Superheroes, because he is their inspiration. And the whole idea of the Legion are all these heroes from different planets coming together as one, you know, to be a force for good in the universe. So in here we have the opposite on Earth. All of these heroes from different countries are kind of just holding up together, and it's like a Cold War with superpowers.
Yeah. So, you know, it's all going down, and that was really exciting. The idea that she's concerned about the time stream, but she thinks everything's going to be okay, because she says that to Johnny as well, because she basically implies, no, you'll get you'll meet your genie again. You'll get him back.
Thunderbolt.
It's history. Yes. So, you know, it's a whole thing. But so the cat. This is where the cat's purpose kind of really comes in.
Yeah, it starts glowing like a weird bastard.
Starts glowing, and we find out he reformed the cat from the original cat that was vaporized by Manhattan. But because it was vaporized by Manhattan, it has Manhattan's energy, and therefore it can track the cat, or can track Manhattan rather. It can track the cat. It can track Manhattan.
Well, and if they fill it with enough energy, they can basically force Manhattan to appear.
Yeah, because it leads them to where Joker and Mime and Marionette and Comedian all are, and they're getting ready to torture. And we find out that the Comedian was only brought on board to kill the cat. He wasn't really there for anything else. He was just kind of embellishing a little bit, shall we say. I actually do love how Batman enters with the Mime kind of trying to tell Marionette that who's there. He's just like the pointing ears.
Yeah, she's just like, oh, what is it? And he just does the fingers, and you're like, oh shit, and then you turn the page, and Batman's just there.
Yeah.
Well, I love because you see Batman tied up in the background, and then it kind of goes into what they were saying in Justice League last week, is he's a Batman. If he's in chains, he's gonna get out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then what happens while they're all dealing with each other, and Marionette's plunging a drill through Comedian's forearm. Batman escapes.
Yeah. I love. I don't know if Joker saw this before. I don't think he did, but his reaction to the invisible gun, where he just starts laughing and says, "I didn't see that coming." And he's just in awe. It's almost like he's getting to watch other versions of Joker's fight Batman. Like, he never gets to experience it from this third person view, and I think that's proven entertaining for old Mr. J.
I really do enjoy John's Joker here in this issue, just because, like Pete just said, he's experiencing this as as an audience and not participating.
Yeah. I think for me, he's still a little bit overboard with the dad jokes.
Yeah.
Like,
I think that just comes down to John's, though, I think.
Yeah.
Then, because what else do you do?
Carter does not appreciate a good pun or dad joke. I can tell you that right now.
No, dad jokes are awful.
Yeah.
No.
So obviously they show up with the lantern, and Veet's like in pain at one point, and he's talking about how much he doesn't have much time left. Batman, meanwhile, is fighting for his life with Marionette, trying to like cut him with her wire. It's actually cutting through his glove.
She does.
Yeah, you can see it going right through his glove. Yeah.
She takes off one of the spikes.
The fins.
Yeah, the fin. Yeah. But you can see it get into the proper glove as well. Like he's run out of time. Like she's going to get through his hand eventually. But But that's where everyone else shows up. Rorschach's there, whole thing's going down, and they basically force Manhattan to appear. V, holds the cat up to the lantern. The lantern, because the lantern was touched by Manhattan. This is why the lantern's important, because it has Manhattan residue on it.
Residual energy.
Yes. Manhattan goo.
Manhattan goop. Yes. I can just say, to the art, I love the look at the bottom of that page. Veet's face, the manic smile as he realizes it's working, and that's
and then the colors too, because you have the blue.
Oh sure, yeah.
And then on
it's
the
way
center,
the blue plays off the shadows.
Well, that and then the green, how the green just pops, compared to everything, it looks great.
Yeah, and lo and behold, here he comes, but Blue Dick himself, Manhattan. Yeah. After all that talk last week, Matt, about removing Batman's dick, here we have the blue cock.
They leave. Yeah. But it just cracks me up with Joker, where he's like, for God's sakes, put some clothes on.
I don't want to gloss over that Batman says, "I know who you are."
Yeah. Well, he's seen him. The whole button.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's how he understands who he is. And I don't even necessarily think he has any more information since then, but just the idea that he's aware this is the man who's manipulated the timeline. This is the one who's changed things. He understands that much. And that's and the anger in his face. Like, that really got me hyped. The fact that he knows who he is. So he cuts out a big circle because Veet wants to talk, and he takes them to the
everyone but Batman and Joker.
Yeah, basically everyone who's Watchmen related. Well, actually, that's not true because Sartin Girl and Thingy aren't. Well, they don't go either, do they?
No, it's only the people from the Earth.
Yeah, it's only Watchmen people who go.
No,
from that universe. Yeah. They're left behind. Interestingly, it's a checkerboard, which obviously Manhattan references that at one point, but obviously I think this also relates to the chessboard from the game of chess from the movie, which I think is very important. The idea that they're all pieces on a chessboard, and there's some stuff later about how the two people playing chess might actually be Manhattan and Superman when all things come to the end. Yeah. But yeah, so Adrian's obviously, you need to save the world, blah blah blah. He's like, no, I'm not going back. No, screw that. I'm here. So here's the interesting thing. He brings up Marionette. He's like, you think I saved or spared your child because you were pregnant? Like, that's why I didn't kill you. But I saved your child because I looked into the future and saw what he was going to do, what he was going to become.
Yeah, I saw what your child would do, and I chose to save him.
Yes, and I thought that disputed some theories when I read that a second time today. But then it occurred to me that even though afterwards we find out she's got a second child, he still could mean that he saved the second child, because he still has to save her for the second child to be born. So it could be either child. Yeah. We don't know which one it's going to be that's important. Both could be important.
That's why he says which child. Yeah.
Yeah, afterwards, yeah. But so they're just happy. They're hugging and kissing because they're getting having a kid.
Right. And I think Mime's reaction to his little hands like, "Hey, come on, lad."
I did that.
Yeah. But this is where we get the probably the first big kind of twist, I suppose, of the book, where we find out that Adrian's cancer has been a lie the entire time, and he's been manipulating Rorschach into helping him. Because earlier on he actually tried. Rorschach was like, "Hey, my father believed in the better of people, and so that was really neat because it reminds us in the issue what his father was like and what he remembered his father as." But we know, if you've read Watchmen, that he completely, Rorschach completely broke him down. It was almost like what the Joker does to Harley in a way, where by the end of it he's a completely changed person and he's lost all of his hope, and he's like, "No, your father was this. Your parents died alone, upset, and so on." And this was really sad to see Rorschach just kind of breaking down. It was really upsetting. But it was this thing like we've believed this time, or at least we're supposed to believe at least till this time, that Veet is got the greater good in mind. And I suppose technically he still might in a Ozymandias kind of way, where he's willing to sacrifice society. He always
kind of did.
Yeah. But he's still malicious. This is still he's still completely vindictive and malicious and cold about how he goes about it. Right? He's still completely
It's kind of the twist is there is no twist, because Ozymandias is still doing Ozymandias things, and I like that though, because up to this point we had thought that, oh no, he really wants to make the world better, but it's not about making the world better. It's about him not being the one that broke the world. It's very Luther-esque in that way, where it still comes from a place of selfishness.
Yeah.
Whereas we thought he was actually being altruistic and like, oh no, look at all the harm that I did. But it's like, well, no, it's people are blaming me for all the harm I did. They don't see the good works I actually did do.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and that's actually when we get Manhattan saying, "I saw a vision of the most hopeful among them, heading towards me, now hopeless." And I think even when I read that panel, I was like, "Is he talking about Superman?" Or obviously by the end, we know he is, but.
Yeah, but I mean, you talk about the most hopeful person in the DC universe. You got a
Saint
Superman,
Walker,
right?
Kite Man.
I mean, sure. Can I just say, I love the transitionary panels of Manhattan, waving his hand to teleport them.
Yep.
That like the barcode sort of effect.
Yeah, it's like a shutter that's closing.
Yeah.
Like a door.
Yeah.
And then it opens when they get back. Well, when they first got there, it has the opening sequence.
Yeah, it's the reverse direction.
Yeah. And then it's the closing.
Yeah, because it takes them to like one of the protests, the riots, right? Also, I like that there's a sign that clearly says "F the bat," but the hand's covering it, so obviously they don't have to censor it. But it takes them to the theater, and this is where the movie comes in, the adjournment with the chess game.
Yeah.
And this is where I completely recontextualized how I interpreted what they were doing with this chess game, because call me crazy. I mean, you might disagree with this, but is he implying there was a third party? That the two people playing chess are him and Superman for the fate of the universe, whatever. But there's a third party that takes them both out before they can finish. Is that? Am I nuts with that reading of this?
I mean, I think that assumes on whether you take Superman as the other chess player, because if you take it as Manhattan versus the universe, because he's changing things, and the universe is trying to do its own thing.
Or Manhattan versus Ozymandias, and Superman's that third person.
Yeah, I think
Superman's ultimately in control.
I guess the reason why I never thought of that is because the third party in the movie, if we're relating them, kills the two chess players. And I guess I just don't think of Superman being the one who comes in and kills the two, if that makes sense.
I mean, I think it depends on the definition of kill. Like, if it's literal, if it's just a case of winning.
Yeah.
Right. Well, but that's not the point of the movie. If I remember my research, and it's been forever though, is that they were killed while playing the game of chess to make it look like they'd killed one another. But Dusk had figured it out in the movie that, oh no, there's a third person.
Yeah.
It was the idea.
If I'm wrong, correct me.
Okay, if you remember, it was basically they didn't know which one the target was, right? That was the whole thing. Like, one was just a bystander, and the other one, and that's why I'm thinking Superman, because his world, he's kind of a bystander almost, because it's Manhattan playing games.
Yeah,
could be, but what I'm thinking is, obviously there have been rumors since the start of Doomsday Clock that it'll end up with some sort of resetting the universe again, back to a even more normal version,
status quo.
Yeah, and if the universe and Manhattan are the players, Superman's trying to take out Manhattan, and the byproduct is that he takes out the universe resets almost.
Okay, I can see that.
That would work, sort of.
Yeah, I guess.
And we also find out that Manhattan was there when the actor that played Dusk had his head caved in, so he knows something about that too.
I guess I'm not completely on board with the idea that one of the players represents the universe. I don't know. I've not had anything from it yet to suggest to me that it represents not even an entity like.
There's still so much.
Such a high concept idea like that.
So, looking at this meta, like through John's eyes, because I've read enough of John's, that I almost see him as he's using the story to tell the story of comics since Watchmen, and like the idea that Watchmen reflected the world that Alan Moore saw, that comics used to be this hopeful place, and they were kind of a kid's medium, and you had these superheroes that did the good thing no matter what. And Alan Moore wrote Watchmen as a kind of like, well, no, the world sucks, and if we had superheroes, they would suck too, because everybody's corruptible. It's just by how many degrees. And then that idea through Watchmen kind of invaded other books. You had Dark Knight Returns, and you had the whole 90s and all of that stuff.
The bystander.
And that's where, and so you had the comics industry take this grim and gritty view for a little bit, and then Watchmen has become this big, cultural milestone in comic books. It changed the way it did things. And so if you look at it through here, it's almost like Manhattan's come in and has invaded the DCU, and it's changed the DCU. Like he's been telling this since Infinite Crisis, with Superboy Prime being mad that, oh no, this is not how heroes act, and he punches reality, and then that's why Alexander Luthor wants to bring back the multiple Earths, right? So that's a very Johnsian idea, and that if Manhattan represents Watchmen, right, he's invaded the DCU and made it more like Watchmen now. It's just it's taken a longer time. So in the Watchmen universe, it's only been like what, 5-6 years since the end of that story to the end of the world, and now because Manhattan's invaded and changed things like the Justice Society and who knows whatever else, it's gone and pushed, brought about the end quicker for this hopeful universe that was DC.
Yeah, but I think just to sort of tack on to something you were saying there about this telling the story of comics since then, the idea that Alan Moore and Watchmen never intended to change what every other comic was doing.
Right.
That was the bystander in the scene. If we're using this as the metaphor in the scene with the two, and one was the target, and the target from Watchmen was to analyze and sort of deconstruct the superhero myth. It wasn't necessarily to ruin it and take it away forever.
Right.
But that that happened anyway. Maybe we're reading too much into this.
Comics as a whole with a bystander.
Yeah. If you're talking about the real world thing that it's representing, then comics as a whole was a bystander.
So I think in a roundabout way, Matt's kind of backing me up by saying the DC universe was the bystander.
Yeah.
Was
the bystander
back in place?
Was the bystander or will be the bystander?
Yeah. Because it's still ongoing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was the bystander.
Well, no, again, the reason why I'm phrasing it like that is because we're specifically talking about a meeting between Manhattan and Superman that's going to happen in a month, and that is directly what we're thinking about in terms of relating it to the chess game in the movie.
Yes.
So I'm thinking of this incident, and specifically
when I said both, I'm saying was the bystander in the original Watchmen story, like Matt was saying there, in that it changed because of its influence, and here it would be to keep that theme going, it's the bystander in that it would change in a more direct story continuity as the bystander.
And how I see John's changing this is it gets out of that cycle where it stops that way because Manhattan stops what he's doing, right? He has the ability to almost blink himself out of existence. So what if it gets to that point where Superman saves the day, and it's not in this murderous way, but they actually have this talk, and through that talk, Manhattan blinks himself out.
I think one of the things we've been saying since the start is this idea that eventually it's going to come down to an ideological battle rather than a battle of fists.
Yeah, you can't outpunch, man.
And I don't think anything in this issue actually changes it. If anything, it strengthens it. The idea that in the future that Manhattan's seen right now, Superman becomes hopeless, and that's the idea that the cynicism and Manhattan's side of the coin will win, right? And Superman will be beat down. Ultimately, this just sets up how more fulfilling it's going to be when Superman does not get beaten and he proves that hope can prevail. And maybe he convinces Manhattan that he shouldn't, go down the path he's going. And I don't think he'll suggest to Manhattan, "Hey, kill yourself." But I think Manhattan will take what he says and make a sacrifice or
make that the only logical choice for him to solve the situation.
Exactly, because that's the other thing between Manhattan and Ozymandias. They're both these science figures, but Manhattan's more of the cold, just like this is science. It's we like science, but we don't like the answers sometimes that science gives us, and that's Manhattan. Versus Ozymandias is the science of almost like Luthor, where you can use this stuff.
It's the science of business.
Personal gain.
Yeah. Actually, here's a suggestion. You actually kind of convinced me on the whole one of the players represents the universe thing. Wouldn't another obvious interpretation to be that the chessboard actually represents the universe, and the pieces on the chessboard are the characters in that universe, and then you go from there? And I don't know where I'm going with that analysis, but I feel
the idea that they're moving the pieces. When you take a piece, it gets removed from the board.
Yeah,
which I guess would be Manhattan and Ozymandias would be the two players in that case.
And that's
there's a lot of options here.
There's a lot of options.
Yeah, because I'm also looking at the DCU in that time frame of, the Justice Society. If they come out and they help win World War II, it introduces people to the idea of superheroes way before, right? So instead of the Superman theory where like, oh, Superman's the first to show up, other countries want their own, it's this post-war era where everyone's trying to work together and they're trying to rebuild.
Yeah.
So you get this more, I don't want to say nerfed version, but you get this different version. So there's not these hostilities there. And yeah, I'm just, this book's ridiculous. Like, I'm glad that this is the issue, that it stopped being exactly a sequel to Watchmen, and it really became its own thing.
I thought Matt was going to hit us with a really weird theory there. This is all a prequel to Watchmen.
No. But yeah, it is its own thing again now, because you have Batman and Saturn Girl and Superman's mentioned, and it's not just these characters from the Watchmen universe. And
this might be the best issue yet.
I agree.
In terms of stoking all of our thoughts and wild ideas about the DCU and what's going to happen, and the debates between characters, I mean, it's the one that's hitting all these things.
No other comic has got such a reaction out of me in the first 3 panels. Maybe
Yeah, as I was reading this next to my wife earlier in the week, and I went, son of a bitch. And she goes, what? And I'm like, it'd be way too long to explain, but just know, Blue Penis Man from Watchmen took out Green Lantern. And she goes, you're right, I don't want to know.
Now you started talking about 6 inches, and then she's like, why are you focusing on that? And, So we come back to Batman Joker. All the other characters come back as well after a bit. Rorschach actually ends up beating the living shit out of the Joker.
He's not. Should point out, Manhattan doesn't come back with them. He sends them back, but he vanishes.
He sends them back, and Rorschach's like, he actually says Rorschach is dead, and he goes to take off his mask, and that's the whole thing. And Saturn Girl and because they were still on the ship. That's why they didn't go in the circle. Actually, they were still on the ship. Was Johnny and Saturn Girl.
Yeah.
And Adrian comes in and he just starts kicking the shit out of them. He punches out Saturn Girl, he kicks. I mean, what age is Johnny? He's like 90, I think they said. He's
in his 90s.
Yeah. Come on, man. Yeah. And he punches him. And how like both like excited and worried are you at the end of that page when he just smiles and says, "I have a plan"?
Yeah. It's like, oh shit.
With the information he had, because we know what his last plan was. His last plan in Watchmen was like the crux of that entire book that resulted in like an entire city being destroyed.
I see him as, I'm gonna take my ball and go home, and if I can't have my planet, they can't have theirs. And now I think he's gonna accelerate whatever's going on.
Yeah, but in a weird way, he's thinking it's going to save both. That's what he says. I can save both worlds, and whatever. Yeah. Cockamamie plan he's got, I'm not sure, but let me get a glimpse of a bunch of different things as the narration kind of ramps up here. We hear the dialogue from the movie again, and this is where I'm thinking there's a third party, because the dialogue in the movie says there's something creeping in the darkness. He's saying, "What do you see, Jake? We need to take cover. This is serious. We're exposed out here. What's that? Something's creeping through the darkness." So I don't know. I was getting a sense that there is a third party of some kind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From this audio, I mean, I could be wrong. But even the fact that after that, there's the shot of Rorschach. What was his name? Henry? His real name?
Reggie. I can't remember. Reggie.
Sorry, Richard.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
Reggie.
Oh, yeah, Reggie. That sounds right. So he's walking. There's like a homeless guy walking past, and he's almost kind of mysterious and intimidating the way he walks past them right after something says something's creeping through the darkness. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. But
I think it's notable that on this page we return to the news broadcast from earlier, except we come to Black Adam now.
Yeah.
And we know how Black Adam's been playing from the whole series.
Well, and he's just entered Jerusalem, which would be an international incident.
Yeah.
Because if this is anything like John's Justice Society, he's meant to stay in contact. He can't leave. That's part of the deal.
Yeah.
So
I think it says a lot that he gets the spotlight. Out of all the news things, he gets the one on his own.
Yeah, that's true. Also, someone is sending a letter to Lois at the Daily Planet. And now, I think thematically, because of how Watchmen ends, it makes, Rorschach would be Reggie would be the one that works the best.
I think that was my assumption. I think he's sending not necessarily the journal, but the mask.
Well, no, because Batman has the mask.
Yeah, Batman's got the mask.
Okay.
The mask is picked up after the letter's sent.
Yeah, you're right.
No, that's probably Reggie. There was a small chance that I thought that maybe this is part of Veet's plan, and he's sending a letter to trigger something, but it's probably Reggie. It's probably Reggie sending her something so that she knows. But that said, though, does he know who Lois is? Does he understand who Superman is? Has he really heard about any of this stuff? I don't know.
He might know that Lois Lane's the preeminent reporter, so that's who you would send it to.
Yeah, it may not be about Superman specifically. It may just be about getting it to the press, and he's heard of Lois Lane. It could be that. But there's also blood in the glove of whoever it is. Now, he did have blood in his gloves because he beat the shit out of Joker, but Veet also had blood in his gloves from beating the shit out of everyone else. So, So,
yeah,
you know.
Yeah, it could go either way, right?
Because there's Rorschach's gloves, they're usually dark, because they're a lighter colour there, the ones that are in that panel.
Let me go back a few panels.
No, they're dark.
No, they're dark.
They're dark.
Yeah, you can see it in that where he's holding the Joker.
And Veet's not wearing gloves.
No, he's not.
So
maybe it may just be like a colouring thing then, that it's supposed to be Rorschach's hand, but
I mean, it looks pretty dark to me. Dark enough to be his gloves.
But yeah, I suppose the way that he looks out, and then you see the panel, the letter getting in, and then you see him walking past the homeless people. I guess it's that's the sequence of events, which is why you kind of read it as him in the first place. And that's where we get to the end here, where we hear "Mark, are you there?" That's the last bit of dialogue from the movie, and then it returns to you hear the stuff from earlier. Two men playing chess, none came out alive, and you see Manhattan's foot land on the chessboard, right? You see, there's one where it's just the regular chessboard with the king there, and then Manhattan's foot, and you actually see what he said at the start of the book, that a month from now he's on Mars, and he steps off the checkboard because he's on the circle of the floor that he cut out, which means he literally stepped off of a chessboard, and then he sees Superman coming towards him, hopeless, and then he sees nothing. And any questions?
Yeah, I think Superman's angry. He's yelling at me, though I'm deafened by thunder from a world falling apart around us. His eyes burn with anger as he throws his fist forward.
Yeah, the world's ending. Mm-hmm. Lois might be dead at this point, and that's why he's finally lost his shit. Like, it wouldn't surprise me.
And then I see nothing.
And he says, "I wonder 1 month from now, does Superman destroy me, or do I destroy everything?"
Yeah, and that is the question.
And then this quote at the end. So I just had to look up who Buckminster Fuller was, and it's again, Johns is on his A game, because it says seeing is believing is a blind spot in man's vision. And then I looked up who Buckminster Fuller was, and he was an American architect, but he was also a systems theorist, author, designer, inventor, and futurist. He published more than 30 books, coining and popularizing terms such as spaceship Earth, Dymaxium, house/car, ephemeralization, synergetic, and Tinsgritty. But basically, he was kind of
break that down for me, Matt. You said a lot of words to me there.
So just basically, he was
a smart fella.
Yeah, he was basically a Tony Stark, Ozymandias, in real life. You could say the dude from Tesla.
Musk.
Musk. Kind of Musk of the mid, mid-century. So
can I add here? Obviously, we've had this symbol the entire time, the Doomsday Clock, but with the Superman at the 12 mark.
Yep.
Now, how much more that makes sense that the entire book is counting down to this event at the end of this month, where it's literally counting down to the Superman moment.
Yeah. Doomsday to Manhattan is Superman.
Yep.
It's from his point of view.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's because we've had that symbol. That was the first thing we ever saw when we got the first tease of Doomsday Clock. After the panel of Superman's.
I still have that button.
You got the button?
When they announced it. Yep, I still have that button.
Yeah.
I do somewhere too.
So that's Doomsday Clock. Anything back matter you want to bring up?
I just mentioned the photo that he has with him on Mars as well, that he leaves lying on the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is
just again. I'm just.
It's him and Laurie.
I just remember the photo. Yes.
It's just it's bad TV, I guess, is to not explain what you meant there. It's just
Sorry, I thought someone was going to jump in. Usually that's what happens. But is this the photo that we had in the original book?
I assumed it was, but I mean, I'm just going from memory. Because even though
I remember that photo was on Mars as well with him, right?
Even though I reread that before Doomsday Clock started, Doomsday Clock started last November now.
That was like a year ago.
So, so you know, time has moved on.
Yeah.
But Matt, what are you giving Doomsday Clock issue 7?
So Doomsday Clock was really good. So, but it's only a 9 because it is the best issue so far. So, you know.
Cool. What are you giving it, Connor?
Yeah. I'm actually giving Doomsday Clock a 10. Oh
baby!
I think it's one of the best issues I read all year.
Our grading system's all over the goddamn place. If we worked for CGC, we'd be fired.
Yeah, and I'm going with a 9.5. I'm not ready to give it the straight 10,